basically track at every stage of the buyer journey. So we'll go, okay, which opt-in page one? And then from which opt-in page one, then which case study page one? And then from which case study page one, which application page one? So we follow then the lifetime customer value at every stage of the buyer journey.
Hello and welcome to another Leads to Growth podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCoy, and very excited to have someone here that I've been talking to for quite a while. We've got my man, Paul Ace here. I'm very excited to have Paul here. Paul, thanks for joining us today, brother. Appreciate you.
Chris, super excited to give value to your audience as much as possible.
And listen, if there's one thing I know about this guy, the reason why I keep talking to him is because every single time I talk to this dude, he gives me value. And we have yet to have a paying client relationship yet, but I've taken so much value from our conversations. That's why I know eventually we're going to work together. And this is probably a good start to that. But so if y'all don't know, Paul is the CEO of a company called Amplify C-Com. I'm gonna let him talk to you about that here in a minute. But basically what they do is they work with people who have big 7-figure high ticket course items that they're looking to take to that next level, something that converts, something they've driven some traffic to maybe, right? But they want to really take it to that next level. This is the guy that does it for you. He's worked with Pete Vargas, Lee Dumas, Roy Higdon, the Rainmaker family. He's done anything from take somebody from 0 to 6-figure plus in 30 days to some stories that I'm going to let him share with you as well, that are just showing people who can take a little trickle and this dude can turn on the floodgates. So how have you been, Paul? What's going on with you, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a little while. It's probably not quite as sunny as last time we spoke, but it's certainly excited to dive in. And there's a lot of changes going on right in the marketplace in the last 12 months, and especially with iOS updates and all those kind of things. So yeah, there's some serious opportunities I think people can capitalize on.
That's awesome. And for those of y'all who are familiar with these our podcast interviews, a lot of times they're interviews more talking about people's journey and stuff. But I'm gonna tell you that's not how this is gonna go. This guy right here wants to drop value. He wants y'all to see he knows how to turn them knobs, and trust me, y'all, he does. So we're probably gonna get into some dirt here, and that's all I wanted. Honestly, it's a selfish thing. I wanted to get some Paul Ace time right now so I can get some tips, bring them back to the house. But Paul, listen, so first off, tell us how you got into, I mean, the webinar niche is a beautiful thing. It's growing massively, especially since the transfer, this whole COVID thing has shifted everything, the way people do business. I believe it's kind of like the demo for everything not SaaS, right? The webinar is like that piece almost, that niche piece that fits in there. But and you know what's going on there. First off, how did you get into the webinar niche? And then we're going to talk about how you've expanded out of that webinar niche to everything else in sales.
Yeah, so I used to be a wedding singer, which is obviously like the natural thing that you expect.
I did not know that, y'all.
so yeah, I used to be I was a wedding singer for about 4 or 5 years, got into like marketing the wedding singing business, and then ended up building like my first info product, which then I realized I like the marketing more than the singing, and also realized I wanted to build a business that I could maybe sell one day, rather than something that when I finished with the singing business, it was worth a new bathroom. That's all it paid for, and that was it. So it was like, hey, there's only one of me there. I can go and build a team and build something else. So that's how I kind of got in and started with things. And then over time, we started off experimenting with messenger bots, because that's something I'd done in an e-com brand that I'd built selling bridesmaids dresses. Like, that's a story for another day. So I started learning about messenger bots and things, and then people started coming to us going, hey, could you help us improve our show rates on webinars and things? So then we started getting into that part, and then they're like, oh yeah, but now we've got on webinar problems as well. So it's like, okay, then we started doing a bit of that, and before you know it, you realize, hey, actually now we do everything from the first touch point. So we go, okay, what is that first piece that people see from you? And then what is every single piece at the customer journey all the way to the last touch point? And how do we find the most profitable path at every part of the buyer journey, so we can make the maximum ROAS, that people can make more profit, and then in return they can go, number one, make more impact in their life, and number two, they can do a lot with a lot less effort, with essentially not having to spend an extra penny on ads.
He's a scientist over here, y'all, with a big water bottle. And hold on, first off, I didn't know about this whole wedding singer thing. I might have to hold you to a song at some point during this this podcast. If not this podcast, we're gonna get you on one, buddy. I'll tell you that right now. So tell me about like when I look at your client list right now, you work with a lot of people with in the sales training industry, and these are some of your success stories. But I see you've evolved from that and are working in a lot other areas of the whole revenue operations stream now. Um, how do you know which KPIs to start looking at? Did it change for every company, or do you have to help the company pull these out, or do they usually have them on their own?
Yeah, so here's what I see happens quite a lot. So when I first go and speak to any business owner that's 7 figures plus, one of the questions that I'll ask them, and we call it client interviews, right? Because where our business is built on a performance basis. So if it's not a home run for us, then we can't do it. So we do a bit of a deep dive with them. One of the questions I ask is, hey, what's your LTV? So what is your lifetime customer value? And sometimes they can tell you the overall lifetime customer value, because that's pretty easy to work out, right? So you take the total amount of customers, well, the total amount of revenue divided by the number of customers you've got, and that gives you your lifetime customer value, right? Pretty easy one to work out. However, what is your LTV on this channel? What is your LTV from Facebook? What is your LTV from YouTube? What is your LTV from this opt-in page or this lead magnet? And then like, I've got no idea. So at that point, I'm like, great. Firstly, we know we can help. So first thing we do when we go into any business is set up all the tracking. And we track every stage of the buyer journey. So a lot of people, it's something that we do a lot more now of as well, is a lot of people talk about split testing, right? And they go, oh yeah, you want to do A/B split testing and stuff like that. You can do that. However, it depends how quick you want to grow. So we were talking about it today and was like, oh, what is it? And we called it a safe cracker system, right? And here's the reason we call it a safe cracker system. So in most businesses that we go into, there's $1 million sitting in a vault. Now, they may not even know where the vault is right now, and they certainly haven't got the code to that vault. So what we go ahead and do is, so if they're going to go and test the combinations of the lock, right, they're going to test it and they're going to test one or two and go, yeah, it didn't quite work out. That's traditional A/B split testing. They might take a month to do the split test, go, well, we need to see statistical significance, right? Which might take a month or 2 months to see if one test won, and they went, oh, it didn't win, now we lost money. So what we do is we use a safe cracker system to it. So we go and test hundreds of combinations at this, very much at the same time. But how do we do that? Well, we actually track at every stage of the buyer journey. So we'll go, okay, which opt-in page won? And then from which opt-in page won, then which case study page won? And then from which case study page won, which application page won? So we follow then the lifetime customer value at every stage of the buyer journey, which means we can go and do 24 split tests in the time that someone else has done 2. So if you can test more combinations of the vault, what's the chances you unlocking that $1 million, right? You're going to unlock it a lot faster.
Absolutely, because also by the time you run half of those, they start to lose some of their thunder after a while. So by the time you start testing downstream, you might start to lose what was coming upstream to even get to that last turn, which maybe is the one that really gets all the deals to flow into the system. Yeah, no, it's
like the gold mine thing. You've seen the picture of the gold mine analogy, right? Where the guy's digging for gold and he gets right to the end, and then the last one, he was just right next to the gold. That's what we see a lot of time. And, 7-figure course creators that come to us, they're not generally in the same kind of pain as someone who would be like, hey, I can't make sales.
Yes.
However, the pain that they have is different. This one sounds a bit harsh, but it's true. Is they don't want to lie on their deathbed going, there's nowhere, I haven't made the impact that I wanted to make. There's no one there holding their hand and everyone's forgotten about them. That is the biggest thing for the people that we work with. They're like, hey, I want to change millions of lives. And every conversion point that they're not doing right now, that is costing them money, but it's also costing them their legacy.
Purpose. You're tapping into that purpose. Yeah, that's strong, because people need a reason to move, right? They need a leverage to change. We talk about that a lot. A lot of the work that we do in sales training. We didn't get into sales training because like, oh, I love to teach sales. Sales is great, right? But we said, look, we want to raise the level of consciousness of the world. What better way to do it than with the most influential people in the world? And so we have that long play as well. So we understand that purpose-driven thing. And how do you get somebody to actually grow? Why? They got to have something, some pain to move away from, right? Or some pleasure to move towards. And most of the time, if you haven't moved a lot, you're going to need that pain in the ass to move you away from before you start running towards again. And that's beautiful, Paul. Listen, y'all, for all y'all don't know, Paul talks all this high level, some of this language is going to go over your head depending on who you are and what you're listening to. But as Paul uses the language, but he also uses the psychology and the data. And this trifecta, I really, really like, Paul. I really like it a lot. Now, tell me a little bit about C-Com, man. What's this all about?
Yeah, so let's jump into that trifecta, because I think it sums it up quite well, right? So
beautiful.
Firstly, C-Com stands for conversational commerce, and I'll explain a little bit of like how that works in a second. As regards to trifecta, we have three things, and basically see it kind of like a three-pillared Colosseum kind of thing.
Okay.
So if one of the pillars is not there, then basically the whole building collapses. So what we need is psychology, technology, and dataology. So why do we need all three? So if you look at the first one, psychology, if you don't understand your customer's mind, if you don't understand what's going on, what are their pains, what are their desires, what keeps them up at night, what's haunting their mind at night, then you can't scale anything, right? Because you've not got the right messaging. So that's the first piece you need. Then secondly, you need the right technology. So if you want to go and scale to 8 figures, 9 figures, you need to have the right technology in place that you can automate and front load the automation with a lot of the key pieces, right? So when it comes to, for example, if you want to add that human touch into the buyer experience, and this is where the C-Com part comes in, what we do is we'll add in human-like messages to the start of the conversation, where if you were going to reach out, you'd say exactly the same thing. That's the way you want to phrase it. And then when they reply, then it hands over to humans. Because if you look at, like, apply a Pareto principle, right? So 80% of the results come from 20% of the actions. So if we look at that process, then we go, okay, technology-wise, let's apply 80% of the grunt work that essentially sending the same message over and over again. Let's automate that. But let's also systematize it so then we can see if it worked or it didn't, which then leads to dataology. Okay? So then what we do is track every single part of the journey, every message that goes out, every opt-in page, every sales page, every single thing that's changed in the whole buyer journey. That's how we find what the most profitable path is. So imagine it, if you're looking at your business right now, and imagine it like a treasure map. You've got on the left-hand side where you are here, right, with the old cross. Well, and then you've got the other end at the top of the mountain with all the gold on there. Okay, now, there's a few different ways you can go to get to that gold. If you go it alone, you may get to the gold. And you may already think that you've got to the gold, but it turns out that was just a little bit of treasure that someone buried when they were being chased, right? So you start on the journey, and you can go through all the woods and the trees and the scary stuff, or you can walk the straightest path, where every time you go off course, the compass just brings you back in line. And the compass is the data that drives you to that gold. And we drive you to that gold in the fastest path possible.
I love that. You can often get on the same path without the data, but once you get off path, you don't know, you're not aware. And those that can cost you time, energy, and a lot of money. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the one thing we can't get back, right? It's time.
Absolutely, time. Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. That's a great analogy. So, now tell me about how conversational. So how conversational commerce. Now I'm hearing a lot of LinkedIn automation. We're doing a lot. LinkedIn's crazy right now for B2B leads right now. It is probably one of the top spots. And I'm also reading for webinars. So when you put the two together, LinkedIn or these social platforms, and then bring them to the webinars. You got whatever the stat the other day that said 61% of B2B companies use webinars, are already using webinars. 61%. So you've got a ton of fog out there in the market, right? So you can't just send it. You've got to have those personal invites, which is where you're going with, right? Like, so this conversational. So is that a lot what it is? Is it more personal invitations that are going out there? What other pieces are you using to build these two worlds together, the conversation and the webinar technologies?
Yeah, so where we see that hybrid is bring people into your world with automation, because automation is scalable, and then to build connection, build that know, like, trust, then you hand over to humans at that point. Now it's about deciding based on where your scale is and where your infrastructure is right now, of where you can put that human experience in. Now, ideally, you want to put it in as early in the process as possible.
Yeah, that's what you said. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Right. So the earlier you can put that in, the better. And then also you have a limit to your resources. So here's an example, right? Let's talk about webinar show rates. So if you're looking to get more people to show up for your webinar, one of the things that you can add in is a proof of life message. Okay, so call it a proof of life message, because basically it just checks, hey, you are a real human and you do reply to things. Okay, so the first message that goes out, notice you're registered for the webinar. Can you just confirm back yes that you'll be attending? Right, and at that point we can do a few things. So we're just doing this at the moment with a test where we're pulling those proof of life messages, and now we can analyze the data to see what percentage of people actually replied with a proof of life message, because then we know if someone makes a commitment to something, then there's something called conformity bias. This is where the psychology comes in, right? You see how they all link with each other. Okay, so it all comes together. So when it comes to the psychology part, you go, okay, well, is that messaging on point? Is actually getting the response that we need? So if we said, let's say, for example, 20% of attendees were responding to a proof of life message, say, yes, I'm going to be attending. Now, and then we looked at our webinar show up rate, and for some reason, well, let's say it was 40%. Then we go, okay, well, now let's correlate the amount of people who attended to the amount of people who replied to the proof of life message. So if everyone who replies to the proof of life, let's say 95% of those actually show up for the webinar, then you go, great, what do we want to optimize? We're going to optimize a proof of life message to get as many people to respond as possible. So then what do? Do we just send one message, or do we go, if they didn't respond, hey, didn't hear back from you yesterday? You can send that as an automation if there was no response. Didn't hear back from you, just checking you're still going to be attending. Can you just reply, yes, let me know? And then you'd put those little conversational phrases in as well, just like, appreciate you, at the end, because that never comes in an automation, does it? You never get, just a reminder, your webinar is at this date and time. Please attend now, rather than, hey, I just wanted to check, are you definitely going to be attending? Just drop me a yes, looking forward to seeing you on there. Just drop me a yes to confirm you're going to be attending, appreciate you. And it's like, so it feels so different. It feels like you're actually being cared for. And then if they do reply and they have a question, that's where you have the human ready to go to get notified on their system to say, hey, you've just had a new reply. Oh, great. They said, yes, I am going to be attending. I had a quick question about this part of it. Yes, so-and-so is going to be covering that on there at this time. I think you're going to love that part. It is probably going to be covering that about 40 minutes in. Make sure you're there for that part. Oh, thanks so much, right? Oh, by the way, appreciate you reaching out. Let me give you this free gift as well before the webinar, just to say thanks for reaching out. What's the likelihood of that person then going to attend? Pretty much like 100%, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And when we're talking about big ticket items, these single attendees are make game changers in your end statistics, right? I know what your final numbers look like. So it's I love that. Now, are these, you were using some specific words here, and I noticed that you'd also mentioned before to me embedded language commands. Yes, tell me about this.
Yes. So and I just want to caveat this one with it can be used for good or evil.
Yeah. Listen, and there's I think it was Simon Sinek. I can't remember who said it, but he said, influence is getting someone to do something for their own reasons, for their own betterment, for their own good. And if they were to find out that these little fibs weren't true, they would still be okay because they were moved forward towards something that they wanted. Manipulation is where you tell these same small stretches of the truth or exaggerations, but then when people find out about them, they're now mad at you because they got to somewhere that you wanted them to get to for your reasons, not for themselves. So I think it's a very fine line. And yes, look, NLP, psychology, all these different things can be used, for good and bad. And I think that's sales in itself, right? The
Yes.
old sales was, we have all the information, you don't, we're going to leverage that, and new sales is not that way. So I believe that people that try to use this for manipulation will get shown out real quick. They get uncovered and you can't recover from that. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So jumping in as well to embedded commands. So embedded commands is essentially what it is. So let's break down the two words. So firstly, embedded, right? So to embed something within something. So if you think even of a garden, I'm embedding plants in the garden. So embedding, right? Planting a thought. And then command is, what is a command? Well, if you think of the army, if someone is commanding you to do something, that makes you do that thing. Okay, so what are embedded commands? Now, they're not as harsh as they sound. They're actually used sometimes as softeners. So, and what I mean by softeners is, like, instead of something coming across really aggressive, you can actually use it to take the edge off things, but actually get a better outcome. So, I'll give you an example. I could say, you are suffering with this problem. Okay, what does that create in the person's mind, right? It creates pushback. How do they know what I'm thinking?
No, I'm not. Yeah.
No, I'm not. Because as soon as you tell someone, like, you think back to when you were a kid, the amount of times that your parents to say to you, hey, you need, you're thinking like this, and they're like, no, I'm not. How do you know what I'm thinking? However, now put the softener in at the start. You may be thinking right now, right? So we've got, you may be thinking, let's break that down. So you may be thinking, so it's focused on them. You may be, I'm not sure, right? I'm not sure, but you may be thinking that. And then what that does, it creates a thought in their mind where they say the same kind of thing, right? Where they go, am I thinking that? Now they're asking themselves the question, okay? And then what's the next part of that? Right now. So using right now as an embedded command as well actually speeds that process up. And you notice a lot, like hypnotherapists and things that use that. So they'll say things like, imagine right now this picture in your mind, right? They don't just say, imagine the picture in your mind. As you imagine that picture right now in your mind, it just creates a different feel. And you can do, so you probably experienced this before. And here's another way of doing it. You actually outline the benefits that someone else gets, okay? And then at the end of that, then you go ahead and say, I'm not sure if that's you. So for an example, it could be, let's say someone wants to invest in the stock market, right? And you've got a course on buying stocks. So you might say, I'm not sure what it is for you. Maybe you want to save for retirement. Maybe you want to go on that cruise that you've always wanted to go on. Maybe it's the fact that you want to spend more time with your kids and never miss another ballet lesson again, just like Chris has done. I'm not sure what it is for you, but you probably know right now what that is. Right? And then you let them make their own decisions, not trying to make the decision for them. That's also part of that conversational side of things, right? Where you're not trying to push your message on someone. You're giving them the options and letting them come to their own conclusion.
It's powerful. It's powerful. We talk about it all the time. The hero's journey, the idea of every element of a story comes choice, right? Yes. And when you don't make the choice, you get pushed onto the battle without having the courage and the power of having made that commitment. That's the gift, y'all. Like, we think, freedom of choice is this whole concept of religion and everything, but choosing is the power, and choosing gets you to the answer quicker always. So I love the idea, Paul, that you give people an opportunity to choose. So the embedded language doesn't necessarily push them in a direction, but allows them to choose their direction through, yes, it gives them the choice. It leads them to a place of where we want them to be, but it's also a place that they can get to on their own. So I really love that, Paul.
And just to add on that as well,
Yeah.
is something else that we, and I learned this from Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference. And I think when we first got connected, this is something I put in the message, and you were like, "That's really smart." So asking for the no, not for the yes. It's a lot easier to ask for a no than it is for a yes. So, for example, we have a client at the moment that they go through a 7-day challenge, and on one of the days, so we just rewrote this out. On one of the days, we pitch the offer, right? So I think it's like day 5, and then we want to introduce the offer over SMS. But if we just go, "Hey, did you see the offer? Do you want to buy it?" Then it's we've just built all this trust and rapport, and then lost it if we do that. So what do we do instead? Well, we go, "Hey, what did you think of the training for the day?" Build rapport again. Always build the rapport back up. Then the next question is, "Listen, I know you need more information, but Chris asked me to reach out. If there was a way to do this and do this and do this benefit and get this result, would you be against learning more?" No, I wouldn't be. Great. Now, there's a couple of things I need to ask you in order to see if it makes sense to continue the conversation. Would that be okay? Permission-based marketing. And then you guide them towards a sale, and then they're like, "I made all the decisions," rather than you trying to make the decision for them. If you just went, "Hey, I want you to buy this thing. This is why you should buy this thing is amazing," that's old school selling, and like it just doesn't work in the same way anymore.
I love this. And what is he really doing? We talk about this all the time, y'all. It's our business. Our business is patterns, getting people out of their patterns so that they can make educated decisions. And that's what Paul's doing, is he's getting people out of their patterns and allowing them to make their own decisions. And I love that, man. Really leveraging the psychology. And here's the best part about this, y'all. Look, if you hard sell somebody, get them in, well, maybe you lose 10% of them, right? But those 10% are angry. They feel like they were swindled. They feel like they made a decision and they didn't ever they feel like they bought something without ever making a decision. That's not a good way to feel. Doesn't matter what you bought. Even if you're not happy with the results, you'll own it. Why? Because you made the decision. And then when it comes to utilize, when it comes to get your value out of it, you're the one who's going to push more, do more, because you made the decision to buy, as opposed to feeling you got swindled and then never looking at that thing. And why? Because it makes you feel bad every time you look at it. It reminds you that you bought something that you didn't think you really should have bought. Even if you went through the same decision another way, you would have bought it. It's the idea of making the decision which changes your feelings about the product or service. It's beautiful, man.
And just to add to that sales process, something that I've learned a few things about that sales process. So firstly is when you're on the call, go to the layers deep with the person, right? Because a lot of people, and you probably see this in sales training as well, Chris, is a lot of people go one layer deep. So why now? Why not wait 5 years and do it then? It's a great question to ask. And at that point, they'll tell you why. But why is that important to you? And no one asks the extra question. So why is that part? Oh yeah, well, I feel like we've got so much more revenue we can create in the business. So why is it important for you to create more revenue? And then they tell you why, because of that. And then by the time you get down to it, you find you shouldn't stop until you get to the emotional part, where you can actually then link back to the emotion. Now, another part that works really well with that sales process is what happens in the pre-frame. What happens preceding the call. And what happens a lot of the time is appointment reminders, and that's it. Right? There's like giving people that homework, that growth work through that sales process. One thing that we like to do a lot is a calculator, right? So if it's anything that's got a monetary value to it, is give them a calculator that they fill in beforehand, and when you get on the call, hey, make sure you take a screenshot of this, because you're going to tell us the results. We're going to go through your results together and look at what you can achieve over the next 12 months. And then, again, this is... So where I learned this concept as well from, his name's Andrew something, I can't remember his surname. No, I can't. I really need to research it. But it's a guy who wrote Finding Nemo. Right, and okay. I watched him do a TED talk, and there's one thing that stuck with me in all of copy: give them 2, and give them 2, but do not give them 4. Right? Give them the thing, but let them work out for themselves that's the right thing. So that's when you do a calculator or get on the call, it's like, hey, we're sitting at the same side of the table. Let's have a look through your results. Wow, that's amazing. How does that make you feel? What would that enable you to do that you can't go do now? Oh, that's great. So how do you think we can best move that forward?
So he said, give them the two, don't give them the four. Allow them to do the math, y'all. Allow them to add it up in their head, because that's them making the decision. That's them figuring it out for themselves. And that's beautiful, man. I really love that.
Yeah,
and this is
works.
It works. Yeah, it works. But and I want everybody to hear the psychology behind it. This is how valuable this is. And we look at software sales. Software for SaaS sales is amazing. But do you know how many people drop those products after first year renew? Like, it's ridiculous, a lot of these companies. And why do they do it? Because the way that they were sold in. Most of the time, it's the way that they were sold in, or the service they got while they were in. But a lot of times, it's the way that they were sold into the product. So pre-framing, Paul said, which is one of our favorite words, right? Make sure you pre-frame expectations. And make sure that you get on the same side. Another thing he said, get on the same side of the table as them. Right? Ask them questions. What are we going to accomplish with this? Direct their imagination and their focus. We know that we can change three things, Paul. We always talk about it. Our focus, our self-talk, and our physiology, right? And you do a great job of directing people's focus. You do a really, really good job. And then the self-talk is allowing them to do the math in their own head, allowing them to make the decision. That's the self-talk, because they're doing it. They're not being told it. So, man, I'm speechless, man. I love every point you're hitting here, man. I really do. But
it's interesting on the physiology as well. Just to touch on that physiology point, is you can create some of that in the copy that you write.
Okay, tell me more.
So if and this is something that I learned from Todd Brown.
Okay.
He talks about, and I'll try not to mess this one up. So you've essentially got like your normal direct benefits, right? So, example, I've got a hammer. It's really good for hitting things with. Okay? And then you've got the emotional benefit, and you've also got dimensional benefits. So, emotional benefits, well, how will you feel when you're hitting that hammer? When you're hitting that nail in?
Oh, okay.
Feel like the man of your house, right? Okay? That's the emotional, but then the dimensional is actually creating the picture in the person's mind of what that will be like once they've got that thing, right? So I don't know why I chose a hammer, because it's not the sexiest thing, but so if you go for the dimensional one, it might be like feel the strength in your hand, feel the strength in your hand as you hammer that nail in, as you see yourself hammering that nail in right now, right? And then what you're starting to do is intertwine the benefit, but also the picture in their mind. So as you start to see yourself doing this thing right now, just imagine what life will be like right now as you go through this process. And then they're like, oh yeah, I'm starting to paint the picture of how that looks. I mean, I'm just writing a new video sales letter because we've all just built everything on referrals and was like, hey, we just want to do massive scale now, so let's go and create some paid acquisition. So I started writing a VSL, video sales letter, this week. And the first line, I could have wrote it from third person, but I went straight into the heart of it. And it's just like, lying on your deathbed. That's where it starts. Lying on your deathbed, coming to terms with a harsh reality that no one is going to miss you when you're gone.
Oof.
I mean, talk about painting a picture in someone's mind, right? And then you don't need to introduce your offer straight away, because then is that going to hook you to listen to the next line? Probably, yeah. No, feeling your stomach fill up with regret. Not your stomach has filled with regret. Feeling your stomach fill up with regret, because everything needs to be written in the active voice, and that creates a picture in the person's mind.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, man. Because what we all know that we can't tell the difference. Our minds can't tell the difference between something vividly imagined and something that actually happened, right? So if someone can paint the picture vividly enough where we can see it in our minds, it may as well have happened to us already.
Can I just touch on that point as well?
Yes, you can, Paul. Yes,
there's a really cool. It's a permission-based marketing. There's a really cool analogy. Well, I say cool. It was a sad story, but there was a prisoner of war. And this prisoner of war, you may have heard the story. He was an avid golfer, right? And he played golf for years. Never been amazing, but he did okay. He went to war, became a prisoner of war, and he was I don't know the length of time, might be like 5-10 years, might have been a little bit less. What he did every day to keep his sanity, he would practice a whole round of golf all the way through every 18 holes every single day. He came out, the first round he ever did, he dropped like 20 strokes off his game, right? That is the power of creating a picture in someone's mind, repeated exposure of that picture over and over again. And this is why sometimes when people go, well, what am I going to put in my emails? How can I go and write a 60 email follow-up sequence? Well, you just say the same thing over and over again in multiple different ways until it becomes the norm. Because, and this is why radio run the same ads for years. If you look at McDonald's, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, they don't even say I'm loving it anymore, because they ingrained that into your mind over so many years that now you fill in the blank to say I'm loving it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a subconscious things going on all the time. So
triggers.
Triggers, embedded commands, understanding the psychological principles and creating that picture in the person's mind. You just focus on one of those things, you're going to increase your conversions starting today.
This dude knew if he was going to jump on the podcast, we're going to end up working together again. I know that. I love it, Paul. I love it. This is great stuff, man. Really. All right. So we've got the idea. All right. We understand this. And by the way, a lot of us know all these tools, right? But it's knowing when to use them, knowing how to use them, and knowing not to lay them on too thick. There's a lot of pieces here that are involved with this process. You mentioned something in our conversation that we had before. I'm gonna pivot real quick here before I want to hit this topic before we close out today. I'm hearing a lot of different conversations about the multi-channel versus omni-channel. Like I'm hearing a lot of people say, hey, look, when you get a channel, when you get somebody who communicates on a specific channel, you ride that out, you stick with that. But I also see a lot of people saying, no, you really want to get people into the multiple channels. They consume content different ways on different channels. So each channel brings in a different variation for them. What is your process with this? I know you're a multi-channel guy, so tell me how and why.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've just done recently with all our clients, we rolled it out at the same time because we were like, this is a problem that's going on, right? Mm-hmm. When as a business grows, you have multiple departments, and then they're not all internal departments either, right? You've got outsourced agencies doing the media buying, then another one doing the sales, another one doing the conversions. So you have to create a hub. If you don't create a hub to put all those things together and see where all the assets are and who's using what asset, then you don't have a coherent marketing strategy. And basically, if someone's come through YouTube, they're seeing a completely different set of messages than if they're coming through Facebook. Now, sometimes that's what you need to do, but this is why you need to identify the most profitable path. So if the most profitable path is YouTube, and then they go from a YouTube ad straight to an opt-in and then straight to the case study page, and that's working the best, great, let's do more of that. Hey, what if we tried that slightly on Facebook, or maybe just use Facebook for retargeting and drive all those things together?
So you're saying, this goes back to what you said earlier. Yeah, it's great as long as you use multiple channels, as long as you have collecting the data, as long as you can look at the KPIs and you know what's doing what. Because I think that's the key, right? Is like to at least the awareness of what's converting, what's not converting, or what is accomplishing said goals. Like some things are adding value and branding that you need because then you're converting on other platforms. So it's about knowing what to measure and measuring it.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you where that came from. So this is a little story when I had my bridesmaids dress business, right? So it was me and my wife running that business.
You're closing with a song, by the way.
I know we've still got to go through that. So when we had the bridesmaids dress business, right, we were scaling up, everything was going great, and I didn't calculate my return rate properly. So we had a 90-day return policy. We were doing like 16 to 20k 20K a month. And at the time, that was the most I'd ever made in a month in my life. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then at that point, then I was like, we seem to be getting a few returns. And then the next month, we get a few more returns and a few more. And then what happened is I was calculating the returns on that month's of sales, not when the sales happened, which was 3 months ago. So when I thought we had a 10% return rate, we had a 30%, which in apparel is normal.
Because the rotate,
but yeah, exactly, because it was compounding down. So basically what I was doing is building a monster because I didn't know my numbers. So what happened is in 2 months, we had $25,000 come back into our house. When I'm running a month-to-month cash flow, we had to take out 2 loans from family and friends. What the postman, the mailman, he would come up in the morning, right? With the old van, the sliding door. As soon as you heard that sliding door open, I'd just be like, please say it's going across the road. Please say it's going across the road. And guess what? It never was. He'd always call me, get the parcel out. And then he would, as soon as I heard that scanner go, right? I heard the scanner go on the barcode. As soon as it went beep, I was like, £300 coming out my account. Beep, £600 coming out my account. That happened every single day. And at that point, I vowed I would never have a situation where I didn't know my numbers again. And that's why it's actually like, so our company values are we ripen. So like wow, effectiveness, responsibility, innovation, personal growth, excellence, and numbers. Right? Numbers is at the bottom because it's the foundation.
I like it. Listen, you cannot make educated decision without numbers, or you can't measure your results or the decision you made without the numbers. So if somebody's out there, if you're running a company right now, if you're running any type of conversion and you don't know your numbers, and I'm talking about know them well, you need to stop what you're doing, figure it out, and start over again, or then get moving. Like it's not worth running these things when you don't know the results. And listen, if you can't figure it out yourself, talk to my guy over here. Right? There's somebody that can come in, and there are levels that Paul works with people, and a lot of levels. And listen, there are a lot of people in this game, but there aren't a lot of people that know all the pieces like Paul does. Paul, and that's what I really dig about you, man. You put all the pieces together, but yet you focus them all in this niche, this revenue flow of operations. So, Paul, always good to have you with us here, man. I really appreciate the time. I know you got a hard stop, and also I'm a little under the weather today. You know, what are you gonna do? But Paul, we're definitely gonna keep this conversation going another level. If we don't have you back on, we'll probably have you back on. You know what? We should probably have you back on a webinar where we really bust out some of your skills. That sounds like more fun. But Paul, where can everybody find you, man? I'm gonna put some of these links in the chat and in the notes on the podcast. But let them know.
Yeah, you can go to www.amplifyccom.com. There's no hyphens or anything in that. That's amplifyccom.com. On there, on our homepage, hey, if you want to book a call and speak to us, that's cool. Also, we've got a ton of resources on there. One other thing being like Amplify a webinar audit. So you can go through your webinar right now and go through the audit, through the whole thing, and see where all your holes and opportunities are. And then we've got a bunch of other stuff on there as well that can help you out.
Listen, y'all, follow Paul. Definitely get on his resources. Dude gives away value, and he believes, and it's one of our isms, our values. Value leads, money follows. Right? You lead with value, and when you do that, people know that you're valuable. Why? Because you live in an abundant place. This guy's constantly got more value to give away, always. So catch him on Facebook. Paul, you got a seven-figure, was it the seven-figure audit gift link? I'm going to put that in the chat. I'm going to put a couple other things in that chat here from Paul as well. But Paul, dude, thank you so much for catching up with me, man. I appreciate you dealing with my sick, low energy self. But thanks for dropping bombs and offering so much value to our community. I really appreciate you.
Chris, always a pleasure.
Awesome. All right, y'all, you know what to do. Make sure you go down and put them stars. Click on all the stars if you enjoyed the conversation. If you got some value, do what you do. We appreciate it so much. So make sure you tune into the next Leads to Growth podcast from the National Association of Sales Professionals. I'm here with my man, Paul Ace. I'm Chris McCoy, Master Trainer, NASP. Have a great day, y'all. We'll see you on the next one. See you, Paul.
Cheers.